The maintenance bay of Harmony Station hummed with the controlled chaos of interspecies diplomacy. Kai Brennan wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the plasma conduit alignment on the shared transport hub, his tool belt jangling softly against the metal framework. The neutral zone colony's main spaceport never slept, and neither did its overworked engineering staff. Another diplomatic convoy incoming. His supervisor Torres called out over the comm, "Make sure those docking clamps are perfect, Brennan. We can't afford any incidents with the Venerians." Kai nodded, though Torres couldn't see him from the control booth. At 28, he'd been fixing spacecraft for the better part of a decade. But working in the neutral zone brought unique challenges. Every bolt, every wire, every system had to meet the exacting standards of multiple species with vastly different technologies and expectations. The transport bay doors hissed open, and Kai glanced up from his work to see the Venerian delegation disembarking. They moved with the fluid grace characteristic of their species, their pale blue skin catching the station's artificial lighting like polished stone. Their red hair, ranging from deep crimson to bright copper, flowed like liquid fire as they walked. Among them, one figure commanded attention without trying. She was tall, even by Venerian standards, with hair the color of autumn leaves that cascaded in gentle waves past her shoulders. Her skin had an almost opalescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver as she moved. She wore flowing robes that marked her as nobility, but it was her bearing that truly set her apart. Confident, yet approachable, regal yet warm. Kai found himself staring, his plasma torch forgotten in his hand. As if sensing his gaze, she turned. Their eyes met across the crowded bay, his brown eyes locking with her violet ones, and time seemed to freeze. The bustling noise of the spaceport faded into background whisper. Other diplomats, security personnel, and workers became blurred, figures in his peripheral vision. He expected her to look away with the cold dismissal typical of Venerian aristocracy. Instead, something remarkable happened. She smiled, not the polite diplomatic smile he'd seen from other high-ranking aliens. This was different, soft, curious, almost inviting. The corners of her mouth lifted in a way that made her entire face luminous, and there was something in her eyes that suggested she was as surprised by her reaction as he was. The moment stretched between them like a bridge across impossible distance. Then someone, a security guard perhaps, stepped into her line of sight and the spell was broken. Kai blinked, suddenly aware that his mouth was slightly open and his tool was still humming in his hand. He quickly shut off the plasma torch and tried to refocus on his work, but his hands were trembling slightly. "You okay, Brennan?" Torres's voice crackled through the comm. "Your vitals just spiked." "Fine," Kai managed, his voice rougher than intended. "Just caught my breath wrong." But as he bent back to his work, he couldn't shake the memory of that smile. In his years on Harmony Station, he'd seen hundreds of diplomatic encounters, thousands of alien visitors. None had ever looked at him the way she had, like he was someone worth seeing, worth knowing. He risked another glance toward the diplomatic group, but they were already moving deeper into the station, following their security escort. She didn't look back, but somehow he knew she was as affected by their brief connection as he was. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of routine maintenance and distracted thoughts. Every time someone with red hair walked past, his heart rate quickened. Every time he heard Venerian voices in the corridor, he found himself listening for one in particular. By the time his shift ended, Kai had convinced himself he'd imagined the whole thing. Diplomats didn't smile at maintenance workers. Venerian nobility certainly didn't give inviting looks to human engineers. It had been a moment of polite acknowledgement, nothing more. But as he walked home through the station's residential quarters, he couldn't forget the way her violet eyes had sparkled, or the way her smile had made him feel like the most important person in the galaxy. He had no idea that she was thinking the same thing about him. The next day brought the usual rhythm of repairs and maintenance, but Kai found himself constantly distracted. Every footstep in the corridor made him look up. Every flash of red hair in his peripheral vision quickened his pulse. He was being ridiculous, he knew, but he couldn't shake the memory of those violet eyes. He was recalibrating atmospheric processors in Section C when he heard her voice. "Excuse me, are you the engineer who was working on the transport hub yesterday?" Kai nearly dropped his scanner. He turned slowly, not quite believing, and there she was, even more stunning up close. Her skin seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and her hair caught the corridor's illumination like spun copper. She wore simpler clothes today, though still clearly expensive, and she was alone. Yes, I'm Kai Brennan." His voice came, out steadier than he'd expected. "Celeste Vorthak," she said, extending her hand in the human custom. When their fingers touched, he felt a slight tingle, whether from the natural bioelectric field that Venerians possessed or something else entirely. He couldn't say. "Is there a problem with the hub? Everything checked out perfectly after—" "No problems," she interrupted gently, her smile returning, that same soft, curious expression from yesterday. "I was wondering if you might show me how it works. I'm fascinated by human engineering." Kai blinked. "You want a technical tour? If you have time." There was something almost shy in her voice, a hesitancy that seemed at odds with her obvious confidence. "I know it's unusual, but I've never had the chance to see how other species approach mechanical problems." "I'd be happy to show you," he said, perhaps too quickly. "Though I should warn you, it's not very exciting. Mostly routine maintenance and system checks." "I think I can handle the excitement," she said with a teasing lilt that made his stomach flutter. They walked together toward the maintenance bay, and Kai was acutely aware of how she moved, graceful and fluid, like water given form. Other station personnel they passed did double takes, though, whether from recognition of her status or simple appreciation of her beauty. He wasn't sure. "How long have you worked here?" she asked as they entered the quieter maintenance section. "About 3 years. I transferred from the outer colonies after—" He paused, realizing he was about to share something personal. "After my father died. He always said the neutral zones were where real change happened." "He sounds wise," Celeste said softly. "My father believes similar things, though he expresses it differently. He says the future isn't written in the stars. It's built by those brave enough to reach across the void." They stopped at the transport hub, and Kai began explaining the systems, but found himself watching her face more than the equipment. She asked intelligent questions, seemed genuinely interested, and when she leaned closer to examine a component, her shoulder brushed his arm, sending electricity through his entire body. "This is remarkable," she said, her fingers tracing the housing of a plasma regulator. "Venerian technology would approach this completely differently. We use bio-integrated systems that grow rather than being built." "That's fascinating. I'd love to learn more about—" He stopped himself. "Sorry, I'm probably boring you." "Not at all." She turned to face him fully, and they were standing much closer than either had realized. "I find your perspective quite refreshing." The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Kai could smell her subtle perfume, something floral and exotic, and see the way her pulse fluttered at the base of her throat. "Celeste," he began, not sure what he wanted to say. "I know this is complicated," she whispered. "I know there are rules, expectations. Are you sure you want to complicate things?" His voice was barely audible. Instead of answering with words, she reached up and touched his cheek with her fingertips. Her skin was warm, softer than silk, and the bioelectric tingle was definitely real. "I've never felt anything like yesterday," she admitted. "When our eyes met, it was like coming home to a place I'd never been." "I know exactly what you mean," he breathed. They stood there for a moment, balanced on the edge of something that could change everything. Then footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, and they stepped apart, the spell broken but not destroyed. "I should go," she said, but her eyes lingered on his face. "My absence will be noticed." "Will I see you again?" She smiled. That beautiful, devastating smile. "The observation deck on level 7, tomorrow at 2100 hours. It's usually empty during the night shift." After she left, Kai stood alone in the maintenance bay, his heart racing. He touched his cheek where her fingers had been, still feeling the phantom warmth of her touch. This was dangerous territory. Fraternizing with alien nobility was against a dozen regulations, and the political implications were staggering. But as he remembered the way she'd looked at him, the genuine connection he'd felt, he knew he was already lost. The next evening he found himself on the observation deck 10 minutes early, pacing nervously. When she arrived, she'd changed from her formal robes into something more casual, flowing pants and a fitted top that accentuated her graceful figure. "You came," she said, sounding relieved. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I wasn't sure. This is unprecedented for both of us." They stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars that surrounded the neutral zone. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with anticipation rather than awkwardness. "Tell me about your world," Kai said eventually. "Veneria is beautiful," she began, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "Cities that grow from living coral, oceans that sing at twilight, forests where the trees communicate through bioluminescent displays. But it's also rigid, structured. Every person has their place, their role, their predetermined path." "And what's your path?" Her expression grew troubled. "Marriage to strengthen political alliances, children to carry on bloodlines, a life of diplomatic functions and ceremonial duties." She turned to look at him. "What about you? What do you dream of?" "I used to dream of exploring the galaxy, fixing ships that traveled to worlds I'd never see." Now, he met her eyes. "Now I'm starting to dream of things I never thought possible." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her skin that shifted like aurora. "Kai, I need you to know that whatever happens between us, it can't be simple. My life, my duties." "I know," he said, reaching out to take her hand. "But maybe some things are worth the complication." This time when she touched his face, he didn't pull away. When she rose up on her toes to bring her lips to his, he met her halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but as she pressed closer, it deepened. Her lips were warm and soft, and when they parted, he could taste something faintly sweet, like exotic fruit. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "This is madness," she whispered against his lips. "The best kind," he replied, pulling her back for another kiss. They talked until late into the night, sharing stories, dreams, fears. By the time she had to leave, they'd established something precious and dangerous, a connection that transcended species, status, and sense. 3 weeks of secret meetings had transformed Kai's world entirely. Every stolen moment with Celeste felt like discovering a new form of oxygen, essential and intoxicating. They met in hidden alcoves, empty cargo bays, and forgotten maintenance tunnels, their relationship deepening with each encounter. Tonight she'd managed to slip away to her private quarters, a luxurious suite in the diplomatic wing that Kai had never imagined he'd see from the inside. The walls were lined with what looked like living crystal formations that pulsed with soft ambient light. Venerian technology that responded to emotion and biorhythms. "You're troubled," Celeste observed, curling up beside him on the flowing couch that seemed to mold itself to their bodies. She wore a simple robe that shimmered like water, and her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. "I received a security briefing today," Kai said, his arm tightening around her. "There's talk of increased tensions between the human coalition and the Venerian Empire. Some of the maintenance staff are being questioned about their interactions with diplomatic personnel." "I know," she said quietly. "I've been receiving pressure as well." "What kind of pressure?" Celeste was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. The crystal formations in the walls shifted to deeper, more troubled hues. "Kai, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you from the beginning." The gravity in her voice made his stomach clench. "What is it?" She sat up, pulling away slightly, and he immediately missed her warmth. "I'm not just a diplomat's daughter. I'm betrothed." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Betrothed? To Prince Valdris of the Outer Venerian Territories. It's a political alliance that my father arranged when I was young." The formal ceremony is scheduled for when we return to Veneria in 2 months. Kai felt like the air had been sucked from the room. 2 months. The marriage will unite two of the most powerful Venerian houses. It will strengthen our position in negotiations with the human coalition and secure trade routes that both our peoples need. Her voice was steady, but he could see tears forming in her violet eyes. It's my duty. Your duty, he repeated, the word tasting bitter. Yes. She reached for him, but he stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. So, what is this then? He gestured between them. What are we? She struggled for words. We're something that shouldn't exist but does. Something beautiful and impossible and temporary, he finished harshly. Kai, please. Does he know about me? This prince? No. No one knows. She stood as well, the crystal walls now pulsing, with agitated red light. But that's what makes this so dangerous. If we're discovered, what? What happens then? War, she whispered. If a Venerian noble is found to be involved with a human, especially now when tensions are so high, it could be seen as an act of betrayal. The hardliners on both sides would use it as justification for aggression. Kai stared at her, the full weight of their situation crashing down on him. So we've been risking not just our own lives, but potentially thousands of others. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. I thought I could control it, could keep it simple. But then you kissed me and I felt something I never knew existed. Despite his anger and fear, seeing her cry broke something in him. He closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. Don't cry, he murmured into her hair. Please don't cry. I love you, she sobbed against his chest. I know it's selfish and dangerous and impossible, but I love you, Kai. The words he'd been afraid to say, afraid to even think, tumbled out of him. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. They held each other as the crystal walls cycled through colors that reflected their emotional turmoil. Anger, fear, desperation, and underneath it all the steady pulse of deep abiding love. What do we do? He asked eventually. I don't know, she admitted. In 2 months I'll be married to Valdris and bound by law and duty to him. This, us, it has to end. Does it? The idea was forming even as he spoke, dangerous and wild. What? If it doesn't have to? She pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? What if we left together? There are colonies beyond both human and Venerian space, places where, Kai, no. Her voice was firm despite her tears. The political ramifications alone would be catastrophic. They'd hunt us to the ends of the galaxy. Then what? We just pretend this never happened? I don't know, she said again, her voice breaking. He cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I finally found what I didn't even know I was looking for. And I can't bear the thought of a life without you in it, she whispered. Their lips met in a kiss that was desperate and tender, filled with the weight of everything they stood to lose. When they broke apart, she took his hand and led him toward her sleeping chamber. If we only have 2 months, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, then I want to spend every moment we can steal, together. The sleeping chamber was suffused with soft, warm light from more crystal formations. The bed seemed to be made of some kind of living material that responded to their presence, becoming softer and more supportive as they lay down together. Their lovemaking was different this time, more urgent, more desperate, as if they were trying to memorize each other through touch. Her skin seemed to glow in the soft light, and every caress, every kiss, every whispered endearment felt like both a promise and a goodbye. Afterward, they lay entwined, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. The walls, she said softly. They're recording everything. What? Panic shot through him. Not intentionally. It's just how Venerian technology works. It responds to and stores biorhythmic patterns. Our emotional states, She paused. Our physical intimacy. It's all being recorded in the crystal matrix. Can you delete it? I don't know. I've never tried. She lifted her head to look at him. But even if I could, there might be other surveillance systems. Human ones, watching me. Venerian ones, watching you. The weight of their situation settled over them like a suffocating blanket. They were playing a game where the stakes were impossibly high and the odds were stacked against them. We should end this, Kai said, though every fiber of his being rebelled against the words. Before someone gets hurt. You're right, she agreed, but made no move to leave his arms. We should. They held each other in the crystal-lit darkness, both knowing they should walk away and both knowing they wouldn't. Love, they were learning, was rarely rational and never safe. Outside the viewport, the stars watched their dangerous dance with cosmic indifference, while somewhere in the station's depths, eyes that shouldn't have been there were beginning to take notice. The summons came at 600 hours, delivered by two stern-faced security officers who escorted Kai from his quarters to the station administrator's office without explanation. His heart hammered against his ribs as they walked through corridors that suddenly felt hostile and unwelcoming. Administrator Chen was waiting with Chief Security Officer Volkov and a man Kai didn't recognize. Middle-aged, wearing the subtle insignia of human intelligence. Sit down, Mr. Brennan, Chen said coldly. Kai remained standing. What's this about? It's about treason, the intelligence officer said, his voice flat and professional. I'm Agent Morrison. We know about your relationship with the Venerian. Noble. The words hit him like a physical blow, but Kai forced his expression to remain neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Morrison slid a tablet across the desk. The screen showed surveillance footage, grainy but unmistakable images of him and Celeste in various locations throughout the station. Holding hands, kissing, entering. Her quarters together. 3 weeks of evidence, Morrison continued. And that's just what our cameras caught. We can only imagine what else has been happening. She was curious about human engineering, Kai said weakly. I was giving her technical briefings. Is that what you call it? Volkov leaned forward. Mr. Brennan, do you have any idea what you've done? The daughter of one of Veneria's most powerful diplomatic families is engaged to be married to cement a crucial alliance. Your little affair could destabilize an entire sector. It's not an affair, then what would you call it? Morrison's voice was dangerously quiet. Love? Kai met his gaze steadily. Yes. The silence that followed was deafening. Jesus Christ, Chen muttered. He actually thinks this is some kind of romance novel. Let me explain something to you, son, Morrison said, his tone shifting to something almost paternal. That woman is a political asset, nothing more. Her marriage to Prince Valdris will secure trade routes worth trillions of credits and prevent a war that could kill millions. Your feelings, whatever you think they are, don't matter in the face of those stakes. And what about her feelings? Kai shot back. Or don't they matter because she's not human? Her feelings are irrelevant, Volkov said bluntly. She's a diplomat's daughter. She knows her duty. You're going to stop seeing her, Morrison continued, immediately, and you're going to convince her that it was all a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. If I don't what? Morrison smiled, and it was the coldest expression Kai had ever seen. If you don't, we'll make sure she understands exactly what kind of man you really are. We'll show her the psych evaluations that flagged you as emotionally unstable after your father's death, the reports about your drinking problem on the outer colonies, the fact that you were transferred here not for your skills but because no one else would take you. Kai's hands clenched into fists. Those files are sealed. Nothing is sealed from us, Mr. Brennan, and if that doesn't work, we'll simply arrest you for espionage. Industrial sabotage. Pick a charge. By the time you get out of prison, she'll be married with children. The room spun around him. This is insane. We haven't done anything wrong. You've compromised galactic security, Chen said. If the Venerians think we're using sex to manipulate their diplomatic mission, no one is manipulating anyone. It could be seen as an act of war, she finished, ignoring his outburst. Morrison stood. You have until tonight to end this, Brennan, cleanly and permanently. If you really care about her, you'll spare her the humiliation of watching you get arrested. They left him alone in the office, the surveillance footage still playing on the tablet. He watched himself kiss Celeste in the observation deck, saw the way her face lit up when she laughed at something he'd said, witnessed the tender moments they'd shared in hidden corners of the station. How had something so beautiful become so dangerous? That evening, he found Celeste waiting for him in their usual meeting spot, a forgotten storage bay in the lower levels. She was pacing, her agitation evident in the way her bioluminescent skin pattern shifted and pulsed. Kai, thank goodness, she said when she saw him. I've been trying to reach you all day. Something's happened. I know, he said quietly. My father received word from Veneria. Prince Valdris is coming here to Harmony Station. He wants to meet me before the wedding, wants to... She stopped, really looking at him for the first time. What's wrong? You look terrible. We need to talk. The way he said it made her freeze. That sounds ominous. Celeste, this has to stop. This. He gestured between them, hating every word that came out of his mouth. It was a mistake. A mistake? Her voice was very small. We got carried away. The excitement of something forbidden, Don't. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. Don't lie to me. What happened? What did they do to you? He tried to maintain the facade, to deliver the speech he'd rehearsed, but looking into her eyes, those beautiful violet eyes that had started this whole mess, he couldn't do it. They know, he said finally. Everything. They have surveillance, footage, recordings. They're threatening to arrest me, to destroy you, to use our relationship as justification for... His voice broke. God, Celeste, they're threatening war. She went very still. War? If this comes out, if the hardliners on both sides use it as propaganda, how many people could die? She whispered. Millions, potentially. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, he saw his own pain reflected there. Then you're right, she said with devastating calm. This has to end. Celeste, no, you're absolutely right. I've been selfish, thinking I could have both duty and desire. That I could steal moments of happiness without consequences. She straightened, and he could see her putting on the mask of diplomatic nobility, transforming before his eyes into someone distant and untouchable. It ends now. I don't want it to end, he said desperately. I love you. And I love you, she replied, tears streaming down her face. Which is exactly why it has to end. She started to turn away, but he caught her arm. What if we ran? Tonight. There are ships in the cargo bay we could... And start a war that kills millions of innocent people? She pulled free gently. No, Kai. That's not love. That's selfishness. Then what do? We do our duty, she said, though the words seemed to cut her as she spoke them. You continue your work. I marry Valdris, and we try to forget this ever happened. I'll never forget, he said fiercely. Never. Neither will I, she admitted. But we have to try. She reached up and kissed him, one last time, soft, tender, and tasting of goodbye. Then she walked away, leaving him alone in the storage bay with the weight of his choice crushing down on him. But as the hours passed and he replayed their conversation, a dangerous thought began to form. Maybe there was another way. Maybe duty and love didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Maybe it was time to stop playing by everyone else's rules. Kai found Celeste in the diplomatic garden at dawn, sitting alone by the artificial waterfall that recycled endlessly through the station's hydroponic systems. She looked ethereal in the soft morning light, her pale blue skin almost translucent, her red hair catching the artificial sunbeams like captured fire. Prince Valdris arrives today, she said without looking up as he approached. The wedding has been moved up. 3 days from now. I know. He sat beside her on the stone bench, carefully not touching her, though every instinct screamed at him, to pull her into his arms. "That's why I'm here." "Kai," we agreed. "No, you decided. I never agreed to anything." He turned to face her fully. "I've been thinking all night and I realized something. We're not responsible for other people's hatred. We're not responsible for their wars. We're only responsible for our own choices. And what choice would you have us make?" Her voice was carefully controlled, but he could see the hope flickering in her eyes despite her attempts to suppress it. "Run away with me." She closed her eyes. "Kai, I know how it sounds. I know the risks. But I also know that in 50 years, when we're old and gray, or whatever color Venerians turn when they age, do you want to look back and regret that we chose fear over love? It's not that simple." "It is that simple." He reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "I'm not asking you to abandon your principles. I'm asking you to choose a different kind of courage." "What do you mean?" "There's a freighter, leaving tonight for the Epsilon colonies, independent worlds outside both human coalition and Venerian empire space. We could start over there, together, and when they hunt us down, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but at least we'll have tried." He squeezed her hand. "Celeste, in all the surveillance footage they showed me, do you know what I noticed? You were happy. Really genuinely happy. When was the last time you were happy before you met me?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't remember," she admitted. "And Prince Valdris? Will he make you happy?" "Valdris is adequate. Kind enough, I suppose. Our children will be politically valuable." Her voice was flat, lifeless. "That's not an answer." "No," she said finally. "He won't make me happy, but happiness isn't everything, Kai. There's duty, responsibility. To who? To people who would sacrifice your entire life for political convenience." He turned her to face him. "What about your responsibility to yourself? To your own heart? You make it sound so simple. Because it is. Do you love me?" "Yes," she whispered. "God help me. Yes. And I love you. Everything else is just noise." She was wavering. He could see it in her eyes, the way her carefully constructed resolve was crumbling. "The freighter captain owes me a favor," he continued. "I helped repair his engines last year when the official repair crews were backed up. He'll take us, no questions asked." "And then what? We spend our lives running?" "We spend our lives living. We find work. I can fix anything with an engine, and your diplomatic skills would be valuable anywhere. We build something together, something that's ours. Kai." She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know I'm asking you to give up everything, your family, your world, your entire life. I know it's not fair, but I'm also offering you everything I have, everything I am, everything I could ever be." She was quiet for so long he thought she was going to say no. Then, so softly, he almost missed it. "When does the freighter leave?" 2,300 hours. That gives us time to pack, too." She stopped herself. "I can't believe I'm even considering this." "You're considering it because it's right. Deep down you know it's right." She stood abruptly, pacing to the waterfall. "If we do this, if we actually do this, there's no going back. Ever. I know. My father will disown me. I'll be declared a traitor to my own species. I know. And you'll be branded a terrorist, a kidnapper. They'll say you seduced me, corrupted me. Let them say whatever they want. We'll know the truth." She turned back to him, and he could see the moment she made her decision. Her entire bearing changed, became lighter somehow, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Kai Brennan," she said, her voice steady for the first time in days. "Are you asking me to marry you?" He stood, walked to her, and dropped to one knee right there by the artificial waterfall. "Celeste Vorthak, will you run away with me and be my wife in every way that matters?" "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, you impossible, wonderful man." He stood and kissed her then, not caring who might see, not caring about consequences or surveillance or political ramifications. This was their moment, their choice, their defiant act of hope. 3 months later, the workshop on New Geneva was small but comfortable, filled with the familiar smell of engine oil and ozone. Kai looked up from the transport drive he was rebuilding to see Celeste in the doorway, her skin glowing with health and happiness, her hair braided with small flowers she'd picked from their garden. "Customers here for the atmospheric processor," she said, her accent making the technical terms sound like poetry. "Tell them it'll be ready in an hour," he replied, wiping his hands on a rag. She approached and wrapped her arms around him from behind, her chin resting on his shoulder. "I love watching you work," she murmured. "You get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. And I love coming home to you every night," he said, turning in her embrace. "No protocol, no diplomatic functions, no one telling us who we can and can't love. Any regrets?" she asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. "Only one," he said solemnly, and her smile faltered slightly. "I regret that it took us so long to realize that other people's expectations don't have to define our happiness." Her smile returned, brilliant and beautiful. "I got a message from my cousin today through back channels." "Oh?" "She says there's been a shift in public opinion on Veneria. Apparently our story has become something of a legend among the younger generation. Star-crossed lovers choosing passion over politics." "Romantic nonsense," Kai said, but he was grinning. "The most beautiful kind of nonsense," she agreed, rising up to kiss him. Outside their small workshop, New Geneva's twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but it was the life they had chosen, built on love, sustained by hope, and proven every day that sometimes the greatest courage was simply refusing to let others write your story. In the distance, ships came and went from the spaceport, carrying travelers to destinations across the galaxy. But Kai and Celeste had already arrived at the only place that mattered, home, in each other's arms, in a love that had conquered duty, fear, and the vast darkness between the stars. They had chosen each other, and that had made all the difference.